victory. Iowa is such a great state. You do so many good things, but you had that Democrat Attorney General for so long. People said it couldn't be done, and she did it, and it's important when you have an administration like the Biden administration that you guys in Iowa have someone fighting back against that with all the things that she's doing. So I commend her for her work. She's done a lot in 7 months, and I know you're going to get a lot more work out of her as she continues to serve as your Attorney General. So great job, and keep it up. Brenna leading the fight against the Biden administration. Ultimately, what we need to do is send Biden back to his basement in Delaware where he belongs. That's what I'm trying to do. You know, my wife here, Casey, First Lady of Florida, right? You know, we actually have our 6-year-old, our 5-year-old, and our 3-year-old with us on this trip to Iowa. We've been doing bus tours. And, you know, at 6, 5, and 3, all I can say is you're not going to have to worry about any of our kids bringing cocaine in the White House like we've seen. Not going to happen with us. Maybe some finger painting on the walls, maybe some stuff on the right, but we'll get through all that. It's not going to be a big problem. Before we took them to Iowa for the first time, this is a few months ago, I showed my kids the movie Field of Dreams. Because, you know, I was a baseball player all through college, and as a kid, so this is me, I don't even know how old I was, but this is like the late 80s, you know, seeing that, it was like a huge deal. And so we showed the kids that, and so we were at the Clayton County Fair yesterday. We had a few minutes to burn before we got back on the road. So my son is 5, he brought his mitt and his glove. We went right over by the corn, and he starts throwing me balls and said, "Daddy, is this heaven?" I said, "No, son, it's Iowa." We are here, and I think we can all acknowledge that America is currently in a state of decline. It's a decline in terms of our economic opportunity, our culture, our military strength, things that we've taken for granted probably most of our lives. It's not going to be enough for Republicans to just manage the decline a little bit better than the Democrats. This decline's not inevitable. This decline is a choice. It is a choice that we're going to make as Americans over these next 18 months, and I'm running for president because I want to reverse the decline of this country. I want to restore it to its proper greatness, and I want to give our people a new birth of freedom. And we are going to get working to do that very, very quickly. You know, as Brenna said, I was a blue-collar kid growing up, and I worked all kind of jobs, minimum wage, to be able to get ahead. And I did that because I've always believed in America, if you work hard and you get the most out of your God-given ability, you can succeed regardless of where you start from. And yet we're losing a lot of that idea of the American dream in this current generation. We need to restore it. I also wore the uniform of this country. You know, I put myself in a position to be able to make money and to be able to do stuff, and then 9/11 happened. So I said, you know what, there'll be time for doing that. I've got to raise my hand and offer service. And so we did. We did a lot in the U.S., Guantanamo. We went to Iraq, serving alongside Navy SEALs in Fallujah and Ramadi and some of those places in Western Iraq. And it was the type of thing that, you know, even though I made financial sacrifices, even though I had other options, you know, you felt a sense of accomplishment and pride just being able to wear the uniform of the greatest country in the history of the world. And you wear the American flag and you're serving alongside fellow patriots. And yet, you look at our country now, our country is losing to countries like China. We are not the country that we should be in terms of American strength. We need to restore this country to its proper place. And then my wife and I, as parents to 3 young kids, we do these education things. Brenna mentioned some of the things we fought for, and I'm proud to do it as governor, but I also see these things through the lens of a dad, of a 6, 5, and a 3-year-old. And we just believe, my wife and I, that parents should be able to send their kids to school, have them watch cartoons, just be kids, without somebody having an agenda shoved down their throat. And yet we see in our culture all these problems. We've got to fix them. bad news is we see the direction of the country. The good news is we can get it right. We can fix it. Now it's going to take leadership, it's going to take vision, and it's going to take the courage of our convictions, because when you do what's right in this day and age, that is not cost-free. They are going to come gunning for you. They are going to have the knives out. They're going to sling the arrows, and you've got to be willing to stand your ground. And with me, the one thing you know is I have a record of actually doing that as governor of the state of Florida. Most people that run for office overpromise and woefully underdeliver on those promises. You know that. You see people all across the country who run for different things. I made commitments to the people of the state of Florida about what I would do as governor, and I honored every one of those commitments. In fact, we made big promises and we over-delivered on our promises. That's what you should expect. Somebody that's going to get the job done. And Brenna mentioned some of the things, but we produced results for people in the state of Florida. We enacted a Parents' Bill of Rights that says parents have a right to direct the education and upbringing of their children. We made sure our schools were about education, not indoctrination. And we got critical race theory and gender ideology out of Florida schools where they never belonged in the first place. We enacted the heartbeat bill like you did in Iowa to protect life. We signed legislation protecting and expanding Second Amendment rights in the state of Florida. We passed legislation that I signed kneecapping ESG in the state of Florida. It's dead in our state. No social credit scores, none of the nonsense. We enacted over $2.7 billion in tax relief just this year to help Floridians deal with Biden inflation, including making permanent elimination of the sales tax for all items related to raising babies. Diapers, wipes, cribs, strollers, all tax-free. You're raising kids tax-free in Florida. That's what you gotta do. We've stood up against illegal immigration. We've banned sanctuary cities. We've sent Floridians down to the southern border to help the state of Texas. We even were able to transport illegal aliens to beautiful Martha's Vineyard. We've stood up for law and order, and we've stood behind the men and women who wear the uniform to protect and serve our communities. Not only do we not defund police, we passed legislation in Florida saying our local governments were prohibited from defunding the police. We enacted the death penalty for pedophiles, and we have identified that when prosecutors go rogue, like they do in these liberal jurisdictions, Florida will hold them accountable. We had one in Tampa said he wasn't going to enforce the laws that he didn't like, and so I removed him from his post. We've enacted universal school choice in the state of Florida, so that every parent has the option to send their kid to the school of their choice. We are reorienting our universities so they're no longer about indoctrination, and they're focusing on the traditional mission of a university, the pursuit of truth, preparing our kids to be citizens of a republic. And in that vein, we've eliminated, and we are the first state to have eliminated DEI programs from our public university. We're treating them as individuals. No more discrimination. And then, as Brenna mentioned, governors they were put under the microscope when COVID happened. And you had to make a decision. Were you going to stand up for the people that you represent, or were you going to subcontract out your leadership to bureaucrats like Dr. Fauci and other people in the medical establishment? And Florida, we decided to chart a different course. And when we did that, we were met with a lot of blowback. I was taking more incoming than any governor has ever taken, constantly smearing, attacking the left, the media, even some Republicans saying you can't have kids in school, you can't do all this stuff. And a lot of people told me, you know what, you're cooking your goose politically, you're never going to recover from this, your career is over and all this stuff. And first of all, a leader has to put the jobs of the people he represents ahead of protecting his own political hire. That is what it doesn't matter what the politics say. And at the end of the day, we refuse to let the state of Florida descend into some type of Faucian dystopia where people's livelihoods were destroyed and their freedoms were curtailed. So we stood up for freedom. We held our ground to keep the state open, and so now we're sitting here a few years later. Florida's economy is ranked #1 amongst all 50 states. We're ranked #1 in education by U.S. News and World Report. We have no state income tax, which you all should try sometime. You like it. We've led the nation in net in-migration every year since I've been governor. You know, one of the reasons I know Iowa's good, because all I have, it's been so fun meeting so many people, particularly in the rural counties, so nice. But normally if I want to meet Midwesterners, I just go to Fort Myers in January, and they're all down there. And, you know, but I get a window into how these states are governed, because I see the people from Illinois, they're bitter about what's going on up there. I saw the people fleeing the Michigan lockdowns, they were bitter. I see the Iowans come down and they're happy. They're happy to be in Florida, but they're happy to be Iowans too. So you see that, and you've seen how Florida has stood out with people wanting to come to our state. So we've done it right. We've put ourselves, by the way, we're running massive budget surpluses, and since I've been governor, we have paid down almost 25% of our state's total outstanding debt that it's accumulated through its entire history of the state. So you have the ability to look at me and know that if he says he's going to do something, he is going to follow through on his promises. I don't believe in campaign rhetoric. You know, there's some things I could say that probably be, popular in the moment that I wouldn't be able to accomplish. So I'm not going to be out there and saying it. I'm going to tell you exactly what we're going to do. So we will hit the ground running on January 20th, 2025. There'll be no distractions. We're going to focus on the issues and focus on getting the job done for the people. We're going to be focused. We're going to be disciplined. We're going to reverse Bidenomics so that the middle class has a chance in this country again. We're going to take all of Biden's executive orders and bureaucracy and regulation, and on day one, they're going in the trash can. We are also going to reverse Biden's energy policy so that this country is energy independent. We are going to use resources here in the United States. And we are no longer going to allow this country's economy to be dependent on the Chinese Communist Party. We're declaring economic independence from Communist China. We've already done that in Florida. We've signed legislation prohibiting the purchase of land by the CCP and related facilities, including farmland and land near military bases. We need our food production is a national security issue. We cannot have the Chinese Communist Party gobbling up farmland in the United States of America. And as President will ensure that does not happen. Take this to the bank. I will be the president that finally ends the problems at our southern border. We are going to take care of it, and that's that. And part of it is you start on day one, you declare a national emergency, mobilize the military, all available resources, stop the invasion by doing things like remain in Mexico. Yes, we will build the border wall. We were able to rebuild the bridges after the hurricane, 1 in 3 days, 1 in 2 weeks. I'm pretty confident we're going to be able to build a wall, so we'll get that done. But more important, perhaps, than that, we will be the first president that is actually going to hold the Mexican drug cartels accountable for the carnage that they are causing in this country. They are sex trafficking people in this country, human trafficking. They are bringing in fentanyl such that tens of thousands of Americans are dying every single year. There's mothers in every corner of this country that have had to bury children as a result of what they're doing. So we let it be known very clearly. These cartels think that they can cross our border with impunity. When I'm president, our border patrol, our military, they're going to be equipped with the ability to fight back if the cartels break into this country, bringing these drugs. That's going to be the last thing they do, because they're going to end up stone cold dead. We are taking them out. We are also going to bring in a reckoning about the federal government's COVID-19 lockdown policies, the people that were suffered under mandates, the kids who were denied education because of school closures. You know, as Brenna said, being in Iowa or Florida, you had a much different experience than what some people did. But there are places where these small businesses got wiped off the face of the earth. You had kids locked out of school for over a year. You had people forced to take a shot that they did not need or did not want to take. And I just think somebody should be held accountable for all those bad policies, and we are going to do it so that it never happens in this country ever again. We also will recognize that we are engaged in a battle of ideas with the political left. And there's always been different flavors of leftism. Right now, they've really indulged in this woke mind virus as their governing ideology. And some people say, oh, don't worry about that, you know, there's all these other things. Well, first of all, it's important that our society is rooted in the truth. Don't tell me that a man can get pregnant and expect me to accept that. I will not, okay? We're going to be rooted in truth. We're going to be rooted in reality. We're going to be rooted in facts. That's the first thing. Second thing is, when this ideology infects different institutions in our society, it corrupts them. It ruins parts of people's lives. For example, this ESG, if that takes hold, the average American will be poorer as a result of that policy. If it takes hold in education, the kids end up getting indoctrinated. They end up having poor performance as students as a result of that. When it overtakes the criminal justice system, like we've seen in Chicago and San Francisco and Los Angeles, the inmates run the asylum and the average family ends up less safe as a result. If woke ideology is able to take hold of the government and all the other major institutions in this country, it's going to destroy this country. There's not one city, one state that is governed by leftist politicians wielding leftist ideology that has been successful. They are hurting their people, and they are causing these societies to collapse. We've made Florida the state where woke goes to die. As president, we'll ensure to leave the woke agenda in the dustbin of history where it belongs. What you see with these institutions is, you know, as a veteran, the one thing I noticed was there are a lot of veterans who have a family tradition of serving. And that was something that's very proud for a lot of American families. And yet today, I have veterans come up to me saying, I don't know, that they don't know whether they would have their kids or grandkids join today's military. Why? Because the military is engaging in social experimentation. There's political ideology, woke activism. They're talking about pronouns and drag queens and all these things. That is not something that's inspiring young people to want to serve in the numbers we need to maintain a strong military. Our recruiting is at the lowest it's been since the draft ended during Vietnam War. I don't think people want to join a woke military. They want to join a military that is focused on what matters. We want a military that will fight and win our nation's wars if it comes to that. As Commander-in-Chief on day one, we rip the political agenda out. We rip the ideology, the social experimentation out, and we restore this military to its proper function, mission first. And I know Brenna will will appreciate this, but we have a constitutional system in this country that is out of whack. Our founding fathers created a system that had 3 branches of government. They did not create a 4th branch of government, an administrative bureaucracy that governs with impunity and imposes its will on us without our consent, and yet that is exactly what we have today. You look at things like weaponization of government, the founding fathers would have predicted that that would happen if government is not held constitutionally accountable. They knew human nature being what it is, that people are apt to abuse power when they're not constrained. And that's what you see with the IRS, the FBI, and the Department of Justice. I mean, can you imagine if we were here even 10 years ago talking about the FBI scoping out parents going to school board meetings in Northern Virginia, sending a SWAT team to arrest a pro-life activist, Mark Howe, talking about traditional Catholics being potential terrorists, and yet that is what is happening as this government has been weaponized against people it doesn't like. With me on day 1, there'll be a new sheriff in town. You're going to have a new FBI director on day 1. You're going to see the DOJ cleared out. We're going to hold people accountable. We will hold people accountable. The free ride is over, and we will be willing to fire people that abuse their power and violate people's freedoms. We will have a single standard of justice in this country. When I am president, the weaponization of power ends on January 20th, 2025. So here's the deal. I think 2024 is a turning point election in American history. We're a nation in decline. And if we continue on this course, the decline is going to become deeper, and it may even be unrecoverable in 4 more years after that. We have an opportunity to go in a different direction, and I think restore this country to what our founding fathers envisioned. It's not going to be easy, but it's something we're called upon to do. I used to think that American freedom was something that was just our birthright. I didn't think we'd ever be in a situation where we'd be losing this great heritage. But you know, freedom is fragile. President Reagan said it's 1 generation away from extinction. Our founding fathers understood this. When Benjamin Franklin walked out of the Constitutional Convention, he was asked, "Did you give us a republic or a monarchy?" His answer was, "A republic if you can keep it." They understood that you can have a great constitution. It doesn't run on autopilot. It requires every generation of Americans to answer the call to stand up to preserve liberty. So it's our time to do this now. And I'm motivated to do it out of a sense of duty to myself, my family, my kids, potential grandkids, and other people in our community in Florida and beyond. But I'm also motivated because I have an appreciation for the sacrifices that so many Americans in previous generations have made so we can be free. I used to take flights up to Washington, D.C., and there was one route you can take into Reagan Airport where you went flush parallel to the National Mall. If you looked out the left side of the plane, you saw right there in front of you, Lincoln Memorial, the reflecting pool, Washington Monument, up on the hill, the beautiful U.S. Capitol building, and you think of that and say, you know what? That's inspiring to see what those monuments and buildings represent. They represent the principles that have made us unique as a country, and you feel very patriotic. But what I figured out after doing that trip a few times, the best monuments for our country weren't actually out the left side of the plane. Because if you looked out the right side of the plane, you looked over the Potomac River, you saw a series of very small, nondescript monuments orderly arranged over the rolling hills of a place called Arlington National Cemetery. And it occurred to me then, and I believe now, you can have great ideas, you can have great presidents, you can have all these things. None of it amounts to very much if in the most trying times you don't have people that are willing to stand up, put on that uniform, risk their lives, and even give the last full measure of devotion for service to this nation. They sacrifice so that we can be free. So the question before us today is, are we going to be inheritors of that legacy that will preserve it, or are we going to squander it? The time for excuses for Republicans is over. We must get the job done now. with God's help, I will get the job done. I promise you this, I won't let you down. Thank you all.